Hello, welcome to this video. This is going to be a walkthrough of the Big Data Coursework 2. This is the first of three videos. In this video, we are going to just get a brief overview of the point of the coursework, and the following videos are going to go in more detail about how the coursework is supposed to be done. This coursework, like it says here, is about the data analysis process. Um, so obviously, in this coursework, we are going to get some data. We're going to do some analysis on that data, and we're going to model that data. This is coursework 2, like it says here as well. Before going through this video, it is very helpful. It would be very helpful for you to have gone through the coursework guidelines, to have read through the coursework spec, because it gives you a good overview of what is expected in the coursework, so that this tells you what needs to be done. And then in this video, I am going to especially look at the external resources that are going to be helpful while doing this coursework. In this coursework, you're going to gain two buckets of skills. The first I call data analysis or data science skills, and these would be useful in a job as a data scientist or a data analyst or just an analyst or some other job that is very data intensive. This coursework will also give you skills in the data analysis process. So you're going to learn how to acquire data, exploit, visualize it, pre-process it, model it, and present your findings eventually. And then you're going to finally learn how to make predictions based on data. So this course actually is really the big brother of that course, data and decisions. Even if you don't end up working as a data analyst or data scientist, this course is going to give you logical skills that will help you to work with data. So if you're going to have a job with a lot of spreadsheets, many of the skills that you learn here would be useful in your job. Even if you have a job that only works with a few spreadsheets, then in that section of your job, this coursework is going to be helpful. And then it will generally boost your numerical skills because you will learn how to think logically about working with data. Now, the context of this coursework is that you're supposed to get data, to do data analysis on data that comes from the transportation and logistics sector. So transportation and logistics involves maybe train schedules, aircraft schedules, road accidents, shipping times, deliveries, something to do with Uber. All that is fair game. That is by no means an exhaustive list. There is a lot that is covered here. So the first thing that you're going to do in this coursework is to acquire data. There are a few websites that I have given you where you can get your data. So the first is Kaggle. Kaggle is an extensive data analysis website. So here I've gone to kaggle.com and just /datasets, and then I've just searched for the word transport. And here you see there's a few data sets. This one about freight transportation, global air transportation, transport for London, etc. There is this score called the usability score. 10 is the highest, so you want a high usability score because that usually means that the data is well documented and described. The person who uploaded the data made the data easy to work with. And low usability scores would mean that you need to do a lot of work to understand the data even before you can start using it. Another site is called Zindi, and the URL is zindi.africa. Zindi is essentially an African Kaggle. So it's a repository for data about African countries, and there are usually several challenges. Usually every challenge. So this is a turtle recall challenge, and it's about facial recognition for turtles. And every challenge would include data. So if you look for challenges about transportation, you would find data about transportation behind those challenges. It's a bit slightly more cumbersome to search for data on Zindi, but if you come from Africa particularly, it might be more fulfilling to do this work for some data from your country of origin, or some place that you identify with. Finally, on our trusty GCULearn, under coursework 2, there are some example data sets. All these examples are from Zindi and Kaggle, so someone did this work for you and you can look through them. So your first job in this coursework is going to be acquiring data. So what you need to ensure is the data comes from the transportation and logistics sector, and two, it is easy to work with. Otherwise, you're making your coursework more difficult for yourself. Second thing you do is explore the data. So you want to check it for the format. Is it usable? You generally thing in CSV, or even if it's CSV, if it is exportable to CSV, because this is easy to import into Python, which you're going to use. You want to look at the content. So you would like to do a column by column description. So it says this column is time of arrival, time of departure. So you want to know this is the time when this flight arrived, this is when it departed, this is estimated travel time, actual travel time. So you want to know the meaning of each column. So this is when you're exploring data. You want to check the number of missing values in every column. So this column has 50 missing values, 30. So just at this point, you're just knowing, making observations, and we'll deal with these later. You want to check the distribution of data in every column. So if there are, ages of people, or the age of the transportation, the plane or the train, you want to check the distribution. So maybe 50% of these are 20 years old, and this many are that age. And this is a great place to use visualizations. You could use histograms, you could use tables, depending on the kind of data that there is. There are a few other things you can do for data exploration, and you can check these in week 6 of our notes on GCUlearn. The next thing you want to do is to pre-process the data. So this is processing that will make your actual modeling easier. So for instance, remember in the exploration phase, we looked for missing values. In the pre-processing phase, we deal with the missing values. Now, at this point, I'd like to make the comment, you don't have to finish exploration before you start pre-processing. So at the stage where you checked for the number of missing values, you could have decided there are too many missing values in this column, we'll drop this entire column. So you explored it, saw the deal, and then dealt with it. And then after you finish with missing values, you can come back to exploration. So you could also do this iteratively. Do something in exploration, then do something in pre-processing. Other things you could do in pre-processing is remove outliers. You could also encode categorical data. All these things are in your notes in week 6, but the one I would like to talk about is augment the data. So I'll give you an example of data augmentation. This is something that requires you to think a bit outside the box. So for instance, if you are predicting flight times, I saw one of the data sets was supposed to predict flight delays. You might have a hunch, or you might do some reading and realize that flight delays are sometimes caused by weather conditions, and see that your data set does not only contains information about the flight, but does not contain any information about the weather. And so you could go and get a secondary data set that has details about the weather for the period that your data set covers, and somehow attach it to your primary data set, so that now you have information about the time, I don't know, maybe the time, the number of passengers, arrival and departure location, but now you also have information about the weather, because you suspect that might be useful for determining flight time. So this is what I mean by data augmentation, getting other data besides the data set that you have that you think would be useful for your eventual modeling. There are other steps in pre-processing that you could consider in week 6 of the notes. Just to note that the things I'm mentioning in pre-processing and exploration, these are things to consider. It might be that your data, for instance, does not need to be augmented or does not have any outliers. So these are things to consider and to do if necessary. Next thing you do is to create a model. So your model is your support vector machine or artificial neural networks. These are the two models that are mandatory to implement in your coursework. There are many other kinds of models that you can implement, and these are very simple to implement in sklearn. I would suggest you start with the two mandatory ones, the neural network and the SVM, and you will then see how easy it is to implement, and then you can implement others like gradient boost or XGB. So some tips about creating a model. There are examples about of how to create models from the documentation of sklearn. You could in Kaggle and Zindi, they would usually show you some examples of how those data sets are used. I haven't checked this before, but let's see if we go to London public transport. So if you go to any of the data sets, there would be a section on code. right? And if you look at this, there would be some starter code, and it says it's a notebook, and there is code here, and you can go through it. And it's so in these sections you would see examples of how to create models. On Kaggle, there are also, Zindi has the same features. And also, finally, your primary source of examples is the labs we've done in this module. Next thing you do after you create, within creating the model, you would test the model, check its performance, and then after testing it, you might decide to tweak your pre-processing. So for instance, if you realize that there have been outliers, you can come back to pre-processing and remove outliers. Or you remove the outliers, now don't remove outliers, and then come back here, test it again. So just change your pre-processing steps and just see the effect of that. So you could have tested before augmenting the data, after augmenting the data. Strictly speaking, you're only required to get to this point of testing the model. This bit about having tested the model and then going back to pre-processing and tweaking some parameters, you can consider that would be required for excellent marks, 80-90%. So those are your tasks. A summary of everything I've just said. So your coursework is supposed to be on logistics and transportation. You're supposed to acquire data from the websites I've just shown you. You're supposed to explore this data, pre-process it to make it ready for modeling, and then create a model. You have to create an SVM and artificial neural network, but you're also free to create a few more beyond that. I hope this is helpful. You can reach out to me if you need any more help. Look out for the following videos that will go into a bit more detail about the specifics of each of these tasks. Thank you very much.